Hey folks. So yesterday a small plane crashed into the General Mills cereal plant in Covington, Georgia. Um, there were no survivors aboard the plane. They haven't released how many passengers there were on the plane, uh, but the reports that I read said that they did recover one body and that there was a second body that was still in the wreckage but they couldn't get to at the time of the report. No one at the plant was injured. A Captain Ken Malcolm with the Covington Police said the plane appeared to start having engine trouble. It was traveling in a northeasterly direction but appeared to have trouble gaining altitude and was making unusual engine noises. Malcolm said the plane then veered right, came straight down onto an isolated area of the plant where tractor trailers are stored. Police said the plane appeared to explode on impact. Witnesses said there were a series of small explosions after the crash. About 6 trailers that were parked together and were believed to be mostly empty caught fire and were damaged after the crash. I didn't see any indications or any information in the reports about the plant itself being damaged. But this brings up an interesting question. I've noticed, and maybe it's just me and the recent issues we've had with our food supply line since the pandemic began, but I've noticed that there are many more issues with processing plants than I've ever noticed before. And I'm going to go over a list here real quick, starting in 2019 and ending up this past April. And this is not a complete exhaustive list of all the fires, but this is just what I've found in a couple of reports and a couple of articles. August 12, 2019, a fire partly destroyed the Tyson Foods beef plant in Holcomb, Kansas. July 9th, 2020, Nashville. 2 people injured in a fire at a Tyson food plant. Reports indicated there was an explosion. The boiler room was on fire and fully engulfed in flames. August 6, 2021, Huntsville, Alabama. A poultry mill plant received significant damage from a fire that involved grease and animal byproducts. August 24th, 2021, just a couple of weeks later, Patuck Meat Products had a fire break out that caused severe damage. September 13th, 2021, JBS USA, a meat processing facility in Nebraska, closed temporarily due to a fire. February 2022, Shearer's food processing plant in Hermiston, Oregon burned down, leaving 2 employees injured. March 16th, a fire destroyed a large portion of a Walmart fulfillment center in Plainfield, Indiana. It was significant enough that the ATF investigated it. April 13th, 2022, Taylor Farms Food Processing in Salinas, California burned and prompted evacuations. April 19th, 2022, the headquarters of Azure Standard Food Processing in Dufour, Oregon burned. Now, according to the articles that I was reading, most of these incidents have shown no foul play based on the official investigations. But you see the pattern here. And again, I didn't do an exhaustive search. This is just a quick search and a handful of articles that brought this up, including one article from Timcast, who I credit with compiling most of this list right here. Okay, so that's an awful lot of fires and an awful lot of food processing facilities. Fires happen, plane crashes happen, there's accidents, but I'm looking at this and I'm seeing a pattern here of a lot of frequent incidents in places where our food is processed. And that leads me to question whether this is all accidental and just one enormous, highly unlikely coincidence, or if there's some intention behind these events. You add in the recent war in Ukraine, the pandemic, and all the disasters and all the issues that have resulted in shortages and food supply disruptions. 40 or 50% of Ukraine's crops are not being planted. I'm surprised there's that many being planted in the middle of a war. That number could be way off. I was reading an article earlier from Bloomberg saying that next year they are predicting that rice, the most basic, most plentiful, and cheapest food staple, the harvest for next year is going to be down 10%. Okay, you consider that, again, this is the most basic, the cheapest, and the most widely used food staple in the world. Everybody around the world uses rice. Even when they can't get anything else, they use rice. And as preppers, one of our basic items to store is rice, because it stores for a long time easily, because it's cheap, because you can feed a lot of people with it and store a lot of it in a very small space. And it has the flexibility of being mixed with a whole bunch of other stuff, giving it a lot of flexibility in how it's prepared. It's just a core staple in our food supply. And up till now, it hasn't really been affected by shortages or whatever. You've seen regional issues where rice wasn't available in stores, but again, it's regional. I can't even talk today. It's regional for the most part due to inability to transport it from one location to another, not because there's not enough of it. It's because you can't get it from this place to that place. But again, the article is saying that as of next year, they're expecting the rice harvest to drop by at least 10%. All right, you add in CEOs of food corporations are saying that they're having to raise prices again and again and again. They've come out 3 or 4 times already saying prices going up 10%, 20%, 10%, 20%. All right, I would estimate it's probably gone up 30, 40, 50%, depending on the food product. And you have others that say, other CEOs that are saying that in the next 30 to 60 days, you can expect another 10, 15% increase. I believe this is a trend that's going to continue probably through the end of the year, if not into next year. It's going to continually get worse. Then you add in disasters like these. You have Bill Gates buying up all the land, all the farmland that he can. He is now the largest owner of farmland in the United States. Now there's some speculation as to whether he's buying it up to push the plant-based and bug-based meat or synthetic meat production, or whether he understands that there's a food crisis coming and whoever owns the farmland and can produce the food is going to have the wealth. Is he playing a role in all of this, or is he merely reading the writing on the wall and preparing for it? That you could debate that for hours. I don't trust Bill Gates, but whether he's behind it or just sees it coming and preparing for it, I couldn't tell you. So, what we have here, whether this is intentional, whether some of these things are intentional, maybe some are, and maybe some are just an unfortunate coincidence. Maybe all of it is unfortunate coincidences. As somebody that works in a production environment, I can't help but wonder, okay, the increase in these have been increasing since 2020 or since 2019 actually. These incidents at these food processing places have been increasing since 2019. As somebody that works in a production facility, I have to wonder, this could be normal accidents that happen, because they do happen, and they usually tend to happen at the worst possible time, which in the past 2 years is pretty much every day. Could it possibly be that these plants are working so hard, they're under so much pressure to produce food with short materials, shortages of materials, shortages of workers, that they're taking shortcuts, they're cutting corners, or just being negligent and resulting in an increase of these events, or are some of these being engineered? Again, as somebody that works in a production facility, I've seen firsthand how we've had issues with bad product, bad material, or a lack of material, a lack of people, high demand, and overworked employees doing whatever they can to keep the lines and production running to produce the products. As a result of these shortcuts and these shortages, you increase the chance of something bad happening. All of this could very well be that. You work harder, you work faster, you work more people till they're exhausted. You take shortcuts, you don't pay attention. Safety precautions slip a little bit, all in an effort to get product out, to meet the demand, and you increase the chance of accidents happening. I honestly think that as far as these fires, that's probably the primary cause of those. The plane crash, that's probably an unfortunate accident. I don't understand why somebody would, if they're having engine trouble, why they would attempt to climb to a higher altitude or veer directly towards a plant and nosedive a plane. But then I'm not a pilot, so it could be that they tried to get some altitude so they could glide a little bit, maybe. I don't know. Failing that, being that it's in Covington, I know that I've been in that area a few times, not many. That's a highly populated, densely populated area, so they may have tried to aim for the place least likely to involve bystanders. That could be the explanation for that. So that could be just exactly what it appears to be, an accident. However, I do believe that the government, and particularly certain people in the government, are intentionally trying to engineer a food crisis through some of this climate agenda. Trying to shut down certain food production, push everybody away from animal agriculture to plant-based or synthetic or 3D printed, lab-grown meats, whatever. All the stuff that they keep throwing out, under the guise of being good for the environment, all in an effort to, I don't know, push the new digital currency that's coming. If you control food, you control people. Because if somebody doesn't have the money to buy food, they are completely at the mercy of whoever has the food and is giving it out, or giving out the money or the means of purchasing the food. So if I have no food and person X over here to the right has all of the food or controls all of the currency, they can say, well, I'll give you food or I'll give you the currency to buy the food, but you have to do this. You have to act this way. You have to say this. You can't say this. You can't do this. You abide by these rules, you can have the food. You don't abide by these rules, you go hungry. Well, when you're in that position, obviously whoever controls the food is going to control the person that doesn't have the food. Food is security. Food is freedom. I can't stress that enough. Everybody needs to understand that. Food is security. Food is freedom. Food is power. Food is control. However you want to look at it, all of those are true. So, we have to look at things with the food supply system as being a leash and a collar around our necks, in a way. They control the food supply, and because of that, they can lead us around to do whatever they want. We are at their mercy, and unless we control our own food supply, we have no independence. We have no freedom. We have no voice. We don't have the strength to stand up and say, no, I will not do that. This is a critical thing for everybody to understand, and a critical reason why you have to prepare. More and more, every day, more and more reports are coming out about food price increases, food shortages, poverty levels rising. People in other countries are not being able to access food. They're starving. You're going to see I believe you're going to see a rise here in the United States anyway. You're going to see a rise in the old style victory gardens, or the old just a garden in general. I consider myself a country boy. I wasn't raised way back in the woods, but for the most part, I was raised up country style. Poor. Most of my childhood, I grew up in an old mill village. And other times we lived way out in the country around farms. So I've lived on a farm. So I understand gardening to a degree. There's a lot I'm still trying to teach myself, trying to learn, but I grew up with gardens. I understand their importance and what they provide, and it's not an unusual thing to have a garden to me. I haven't always had one, but over the last few years, I've definitely tried to have one. And again, it's been a learning curve for me because up until a handful of years ago, I hadn't messed with a garden since I was a little kid, walking behind my grandfather while he tilled the garden. Or walking behind my dad when he tilled the garden. So those are things I used to do as a little kid, and then there was a long period between then and now that I went without having a garden. And then it was in the last few years that I started actually trying to grow things. So there's a lot that I remember from back in those days, but as a little kid, you don't really pay attention to a lot of stuff. I don't remember a lot of the things that my grandfather did to produce food. I'm wishing now I did, but I'm doing this myself now because there is a learning curve. There's a lot to learn, and I would rather learn now while I do have food on the shelves at the grocery store than wait until everything hits the fan and there's no more food in the stores, and then try to plant a garden and then produce whatever I can. That is the wrong time to be trying to learn how to grow anything. You need to be learning how to grow now. Don't wait until then. These survival seed cans that you see, the seed vaults, the stuff you can buy online, those are a bad idea in my opinion. And I'll tell you why. When you buy those cans, most people buy them with the thought that, okay, I'll buy this, they're vacuum sealed or whatever, so they'll be good on the shelf for 10, 15, 20 years. I won't need to break into them until da-da-da happens. Whatever the SHTF is going to be that you're preparing for, they'll be good until then. The problem is, once everything goes down, and you plant those, open up that can and plant those seeds, one, the viability and the germination rate on those seeds will go down. Even being vacuum sealed, over time the germination rates go down in those seeds. It might not be as much as if they're in a container where they're exposed to air. The germination rate might not go down quite as fast, but it's still going to go down. Second, again, you're going to have that learning curve. When you first start gardening, you're not always going to be successful. You're going to have failures. You're going to do things wrong while you learn. So your first garden or two, you're probably not going to get much food out of it. Third, I lost my train of thought. Third, you're going to have a long growing period. Again, it takes, depending on the type of vegetable you're growing, it can take anywhere from 30 days to 105 days for that plant to grow and actually produce food. So just because you plant it in the ground doesn't mean you're going to get food right away. You might have to wait 3-4 months before you actually get anything to eat from those plants. What are you going to eat between the time that crap hits the fan and the time your harvest is ready? That's what food storage is for. That's why you put up food. That's why you freeze dry it, or buy freeze dried if you can. Freeze dry your own stuff if you can afford one of the freeze dryers. You dehydrate. You freeze. You buy as much stuff as you can. You vacuum seal it. That's what that food storage is for. The food storage is not really intended, or I should say should not be intended, to run you indefinitely. Because if it's a complete off the grid, or if it's a complete grid down, into the world as we know it, Mad Max type situation, more of that food is not going to be coming in. There's not going to be a time when you're going to have access to more of that food. It's not going to be like after a hurricane where a few months in, the stores are reopened and restocked and everything. That's not going to happen. Or that may not happen. It all depends on the type of the SHTF. The food storage is to get you from the time that everything goes down all the way over to when you can actually start harvesting from your garden, from your own livestock, from what you're hunting, and from what you're trading for. It's a stepping stone. It's not meant to completely live off of, because you can't store that much food. Yeah, I've seen people on Doomsday Preppers, it looks like they've had 3, 4, 5 years worth of food, okay? But that's only 3, 4, 5 years worth of food. Assuming you're 30 years old when the SHTF happens. And it is the worst possible scenario. Everything's down. There's not going to be any stores coming back. There's not going to be any more food processing plants reopen up, even a year or 2 years down the road. That's it. It's just what you have and what you can do is all you've got. Well, you can't store 70, 80 years worth of food. You just can't do it. It's not physically possible. Now, you can store a lot of food. You might even be fortunate enough to be able to store 10 or 20 years worth of food if you can afford that much freeze-dried food. Freeze-dried food would last that long. The problem is it's highly expensive. It is not efficient money-wise. Cost-wise. It's very cost-prohibitive. So, what you buy, what you store, should really be looked at not as a long-term solution, but as a stepping stone to get you from the grid down so you have plenty to eat while you build up your livestock and your garden and your hunting and foraging and your trading. That's what your food storage is for. It's not to live off of indefinitely, because there is a limit to it. At some point, you will be required to either produce your own food or trade for it. So, bear that in mind when we talk about food storage, when we talk about prepping. I get it. Gardening is not glamorous. Gardening, when it comes to prepping and survival, it's not glamorous. It's not like the guns and the tactical crap and all the body armor and the night vision and all this cool stuff that's really fun to play around with. It's not like that. But you really need to understand that it is so much more important than that other stuff. Not to say that guns and ammo and body gear and, body armor and all that stuff has its role to play. All that stuff is important, especially if you want to look at protecting your current preps in addition to what you're going to be producing. You need a way of protecting yourself and what you have. But you have to understand that food is a higher priority than this other stuff. Everybody always says, they're quick to say, well, without guns, you're not going to have anything. Maybe, maybe not. You don't know exactly how bad it's going to be. You can assume, you can hypothesize, you can guess, but you don't know exactly what the scenario is going to look like. We have no idea exactly how the SHTF is going to look. It could be running and gunning, Red Dawn, Mad Max type situation. Then again, it could be a complete breakdown similar to the pioneer days where there's no power, there's no running water except what you have from a well or whatever. And whatever food you have is from your own farm and from trade with other people. It could be either one of those or anywhere in between. But I guarantee you have to eat just like you have to have water every You can go 2, maybe 3 days without water depending on your environment and your activity. You might be able to go 2 weeks without food. How long can you go without being in a gun battle? I'm 47 years old. I've never been in a gunfight. Now, after SHTF happens, that might completely change. But understand that you will most likely, not to say that you'll never need to use a gun to defend yourself or your preps, but you will almost always need to eat before you have to use that gun. I'm not saying the gun isn't important, but don't relegate food to a lower priority than firearms. Food has to be one of your top priorities. And again, I can tell by the number of views that I get on my videos when I talk about food, when I talk about my garden, there are so many fewer viewers on those videos than when I talk about the hot button topics. Those get way more views because those are cool, those are fun, those are exciting. Gardening is not, at least not to most people. To some people it is. I enjoy talking about it because I know that I'm developing a skill that can feed me and my family. And to me, that's pretty cool. It's a skill just like any other. All right, so I got off on a tangent there, and I understand that. All of these fires, the plane crash and everything, I don't believe any of that was intentional. I believe that was accidental. I do believe that there is an intentional, engineered effort to create a food shortage so that they can push us to develop or to move into the type of society that they want us to live in. A digital currency, easily tracked, easily controlled, lacking freedom. So, yes, our food system is under attack. I don't believe this is part of it. I think this is just a result of a strained food supply system as well as Murphy's Law. Anything can go wrong will go wrong. That's what I see when I look at these types of fires and disasters and crashes and whatever. But even though these aren't caused directly by an intentional attack on the system, they are a symptom of the attack on the system. We have a strained supply line. That strain puts pressure on every food producer out there. And when you put pressure on food producers, people get overworked. They're working short-handed. One person trying to cover multiple jobs. They're cutting corners. Safety is taking a back seat to production, and accidents happen. The result being that anytime there is an accident that causes more fires at food plants or more disasters, that just causes more shortages and puts even more strain on the supply system, and it's just a very vicious self-feeding circle. So we need to take this stuff for what it is. It's a symptom of a much larger problem that is going to constantly self-feed itself. It's going to self-feed, and it's going to continually build like a snowball going downhill, encouraged and aggravated by the political elites that want to push us in one direction or the other so they can control us better without regard to the damage that they're causing to the system. And it's not that I don't think that they're so incompetent that they're not aware of what they're doing. I think they are aware of what they're doing. I think that they just don't care. Everybody in Congress makes so much more money than the average person. The majority of them, because of their insider trading ability, they're millionaires. They don't have to worry about food. You and I do. And what we need to be proactive and take steps to make sure that we aren't left in the dirt, hungry, groveling for food at their feet the way they want us to be. If you value freedom, if you value security, you should be producing your own food. Doesn't matter how much, any little bit will help. The more the better. So yes, I believe that the majority of the instances going on with our food supply system, not all of it, but the majority is engineered and controlled and intentional. So be aware of that. Again, take steps. And everybody wants solutions. They want somebody else to give you the answer. The only answer I can give you: grow your own food. Raise your own livestock. Build a barter network with people around you that can produce the things that you can't, that you can trade with. Stock up on items that you can barter with, whether that's things that you produce, things that you grow, gold and silver if you have it, barterable goods or barterable goods, be that ammo or various hygiene items that are really cheap right now. Put that back. Hygiene items are a major item that could be bartered for food. Medicines, highly valuable in an SHTF, particularly things like antibiotics or chronic medications for chronic conditions. I would say that alcohols and cigarettes and coffee, things like that, vices are going to be highly valuable. The only problem I have with alcohol, coming from a person that doesn't drink, I don't drink at all, because I know what it does to people. I know how careless people get when they get drunk. I know how dangerous it can be, and most people abuse it. You add bartering alcohol and bullets and firearms in a SHTF situation where food and basic necessities are very hard to come by. To me, bartering alcohol and firearms and bullets, that's a combination just asking for a disaster. That's why, me personally, I will not be bartering any of those three items. At least that's not my intention. I won't say I'll never do it. You know that old saying, never say never. Because there might be a situation, I might find myself in a situation where I actually consider it for whatever reason. I can't foresee that situation right now. But who knows, that situation might arise. But I have no intention at this moment of ever doing that. I might be desperate enough one day that I have to. I know this is a longer video than what I usually post, but this is something that we need to look at. This is something that we need to be aware of. Our food supply system is highly vulnerable right now. It's been strained for 2 years to its breaking point. And we've had multiple disasters or crises happen to put that food system into a strained situation. I don't believe it could get much more strained than what it is right now. You know, we've had pandemics, we've had fires, we've had droughts, we've had floods, we've had the war in Ukraine now. There's people saying that we should be sending our food. We have so much food here, we should be sending it overseas. You do that, the problem is we're going to run into more shortages here, and the price is going to go up, which is just going to exacerbate the problem. Oh. All it takes is one or two more really bad crises for this to completely break and collapse. If the COVID has some kind of resurgence, I don't believe it will. Any kind of resurgence that they're talking about, I honestly believe is being manufactured out of fear or desire to control more. But any resurgence from that resulting in widespread lockdowns could be the straw that broke the camel's back. Shanghai is already locked down. There's multiple cities in China are already locked down. We get so much of our stuff from China, it's not even funny. We're way too dependent on China for our the products we need. They are locked down. Some of their cities have been completely locked down for weeks. I heard one report. I can't verify it at the moment. I haven't looked it up. I haven't had time to look it up. But I've seen one report that said that, I believe it was Shanghai, is under an indefinite lockdown. There's no end to it. You know, we've got that going on. Again, we got the war in Ukraine. What happens if China hits Taiwan, goes after Taiwan, and there's a war started over that? You know, it's how much more can our food supply system, our food chain take before it just completely crumbles and collapses? This is why you need to be, while you can, while it's available, while it's still relatively cheap or affordable, stack it to the roof. Put it up every way you can. Start producing your own stuff now. If you don't want to raise livestock, make contact with people around you in your local area that do raise livestock. Start bartering with them. Hunt, fish, anything you can. Do it now while you can, while you have the ability to fall back on a grocery store if something doesn't go the way you need it to. If you fail at hunting, if you don't catch any fish, if your garden is a total disaster and doesn't produce anything, you can still go to a store. How much longer, though? How much longer can you be going to that store? You don't know. Just keep this in mind, folks. Anyway, this has been a long video, so I'm going to cut it here. I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate all my subscribers, all the commenters. Like, share, subscribe if you haven't. Do what you got to do to take care of yourselves, folks. In the end, I can tell you what to do. I can suggest what you got to do. And you can say, well, give me solutions, but the solution comes down to you getting up and doing something. The solution is you getting up, planting some vegetables. Go hunting, go fishing. Get some chickens, get some rabbits, get some quail. If you got enough land, get some goats or some cattle. The solution is you getting active and doing something. Get off of YouTube. Stop watching TV. Stop reading books. Stop looking to other people for answers and solutions. you're the only person that you can really count on. I hate to say it like that, but in the end, it all comes down to you. What you can do. That's it. It's up to you. Anyway, that's all I've got. Until next time, folks, take care. I'll catch you later.